there. Good morning. Thank you very much for coming along today. My pleasure too to be here. Can I start by asking this king to rise? Liz, thank you so much. Lovely gift you just given me this morning. Thank you very much. And I'll read the message. It says, for the days when you need a little lift, you will soon be soaring high again, rising above the chaos. Handmade King. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming and thanks for all the work you did in the general election. Can I say a huge thank you and congratulations to Naomi, the agent here, and all of you that worked so hard in the constituency in the general election. After Tory majority, you took the Labour message to every doorstep across the whole constituency. You gained support for the party. You showed that next time round there's going to be a Labour MP, Fulton and Bradley Stoke. And thank you to all those who came into the constituency to help on election day and in the campaign itself, because that election campaign was very special. If you remember, at the start of the campaign, we had really good microphones. At the end of the campaign, the microphones didn't work so well, but there's always help on hand from good comrades in the party. Thank you very much. You see, we're the party of technology. Since 2007, 2008-9 period, when the financial crisis happened, there's been an economic narrative and analysis which simply says the banking crisis can only be dealt with by slashing public expenditure, imposing austerity, and therefore damaging the life chances of so many people within our society. The same medicine has been tried in other countries as well. That wasn't an economic necessity, that was a political choice made by the coalition government in 2010 to reduce benefits for those with disabilities, to reduce benefits for those who desperately needed it, and to freeze wages in the public sector, and to slash local government and NHS expenditure. That was the choice that they made. People said to me, you can't win an election unless you accept the economic medicine that is being offered. The collective agreement of all those also clever people all over the world, that's the only way forward. I reject that. I simply say that the banking crisis of 2008 should not be paid for by the young people, the old people, the poor people of today. It should be paid for by those who caused it in the first place. And so we put forward a manifesto which had at its heart investment in the economy for the future, the establishment of a national investment bank for all parts of the country to improve infrastructure, improve housing, improve health and improve education. And above all, invest in sustainable green technology industries of the future. And so that we are a party of investment for the 21st century. But we don't walk away from the principles, the basic principles which our party is about, which is about fairness, justice and decency in society. And our manifesto was very clear on a number of policy areas, and the next one will be equally as clear, with probably more detail, because I'm asking all party members, affiliated unions, affiliated social societies, anyone else who's got ideas, to put them forward on how we bring forward more detail in our manifesto, so that come the general election, whenever it comes, we're there, ready to go into government and carry it out. Now, I was delighted with the campaign that we mounted throughout the general election. and the spirit that we got from that election campaign, and that sense of strength. And it was almost as if there was a sort of parallel universe going on. There was groups of very well-intentioned journalists, I'm sure, sitting around in London telling the world what they thought and what they thought the result would be. And out there was something completely different happening. Thousands and thousands of people were coming out onto the streets, not just to go to meetings and rallies, but to discuss politics, to discuss the alternative, to discuss the power they have to change things in society. And so my message throughout the campaign was knock on doors and identify Labour support so that on polling day we can remind them ever so politely at 8 o'clock in the morning to vote, slightly less politely at midday, without too much politeness at 6 p.m, and by 9:30 p.m, if they still haven't voted, you have my full permission to be quite blunt with people. Get down there and vote and get out and get your vote recorded. But the message I also gave, and all of the shadow cabinet gave it as well, was go out there and have conversations with people. Get people in the cafes and the pubs and the clubs and the buses and the trains and everywhere, just talking about what is possible and what we could achieve in society. Because that is what empowers people. And I tell you what, our party membership has gone up even more since the general election. And last time I looked, last week, it was up to 575,000 members of the party. We are a big organisation that can have a big influence on community life and obviously on politics. Now, I was very sad that we didn't quite get a majority and win the general election. I was very proud that we put on 3 million more votes than we achieved in the 2015 general election, the largest increase in Labour vote at any election except for 1945. It's something I think we can all be very proud of. But the sad realistic truth is we didn't quite achieve what we wanted, which was a majority in Parliament to give us a Labour government. But the Tories lost seats and they are a minority government. They're a minority government that decided to rely on the support of the DUP in order to maintain themselves in office. And I know all these DUP MPs are incredibly brilliant, superbly skilled, very intelligent people. And I know that footballers are sometimes overvalued, but I ask you this, £100 million for each DUP MP seems to me a bit on the high side, even in the exaggerated market of Premiership football transfers. And so they found £1 billion to buy off the DUP with investment in Northern Ireland. I have no problem with investment in Northern Ireland. I just wish there was the same level of investment all over the country. And in councils like Bristol weren't underfunded by this Tory government. Instead, those resources were available all across the country. Well, they can't survive forever like this. And so we gave them some opportunities straight away. In the first vote in Parliament, after the Queen's speech had been announced and read out, we sought and called for and got a vote on lifting the public sector pay cap. Not a complicated issue, would have thought, for anybody. So those Tory MPs that went through the election campaign saying how sorry they were that nurses' pay had been frozen, how sorry they were that firefighters had had their pay frozen, how sorry they were of local government workers on a pay freeze, often doing almost 2 jobs to make up for the cuts that had taken place. How sorry they were about all that. We gave them the opportunity to lift the public sector pay cap and allow all those unions to negotiate properly, openly, fairly and independently for future wages and conditions. Do you know what? The DUP and the Tories voted it down. That is what they're about. 2 standards. Crocodile tears for those during an election campaign and no pay for them after the election campaign. So we will continue pushing them and challenging them all the way. And in the amendment we put forward to the Queen's speech, we pointed out just some of the issues that we'd raised in the election campaign that are so important, of issues that affect everybody in this country. I've just come from Southmead's Hospital this morning, I was meeting people who are in the getting treatment for cancer and support during the most traumatic and difficult times of their lives. And the dedication, the sympathy, the decency of all those that work within our National Health Service is quite incredible. Today at the Royal Hospital in Truro. And we should think about the National Health Service not just as a service, but something somewhere beyond that. We have a philosophy amongst us all, which is that we respect people, that we support each other, that we don't pass by on the other side when people are going through difficulties. And it was those principles, that inspiration, that view of socialism, of social justice, of those values that led the Labour Party to support the principle of a National Health Service in 1945 after the general election. It would have been very easy for that government, with all the problems that it faced, the destruction of the war, bombed out city centres. I remember as a child coming to Bristol as a young child in the mid-1950s and seeing the destruction that was still there in Plymouth and still there in so many other cities. It would have been very easy for that government to have said, it's too expensive, it's too complicated, it's too difficult, leave it for the future. They said, no, this is the time to set down what we mean to do for the future and establish a National Health Service, healthcare, free at the point of use for everybody, for all time, as a human right. Very, very important principle. One which we all hope across. Our NHS is, of course, under threat. Under threat from underfunding, under threat from privatisation, under threat from the internal market, under threat because so many other services don't work as effectively as they should. Because ill health is a consequence, in some cases, of medical misfortune. In some cases, it's a product of stress in society. In some cases, it's a product of bad housing, of dangerous working conditions, of bad air, of environmental problems. Health cannot be viewed in isolation from everything else that we do in our lives and our society. And so, as a party, we are pledged to properly fund the National Health Service, to make realistic and real the right of everyone with a diagnosed cancer condition to be seen within 2 weeks. There are 25,000 that are waiting 2 months to get an appointment, and that there are A&E departments within reach of everybody across the country. So we would suspend the sustainability and transformation plans and look again at the whole configuration and provision of healthcare across the country. And we would also ensure that the mental health services are properly funded, because there is supposed to be parity of esteem. One of the few things I agree with in the Health and Social Care Act is the parity of esteem between physical and mental health. By the way, it's only there because of a Labour amendment that originated by Labour peers in the House of Lords and was eventually agreed by the House of Commons. But I want to make sure that that is a reality, and those with mental health conditions do get the treatment that they need, do get the therapy they need and support, and that we as a party and a movement do everything we can to reduce and remove the stigma associated with mental health conditions within our society. It can happen to any of us. A quarter of us are going to suffer it during our lives. I had a very good conversation this morning with the excellent Mayor of Bristol, Marvin Rees. We had a great discussion about the needs of people across the city and the way in which the stress levels of bad housing, of insecure employment, of unemployment, of stress in school and education and work leads on to pressures within the National Health Service. We need a holistic approach to public services and how we deal with them. And that is what a Labour government would be offering. And I'm very keen that we should do that. And that means also looking very hard at education and education provision across the country. The Conservative funding formula for school budgets has been attacked, and they've tried to buy their way out of it. They've tried to say they're going to refund schools so that there's enough money for each pupil. At one level that sounds great, we'd all support that, except when you look where the money's coming from. Is it new money coming from central government? Is it new money coming from taxation on those that can afford to pay a bit more? No. It's taken from education and health budgets. So in other words, we're going to give even less support to the health needs of pupils in order to buy their way out of the crisis that is of their making, where there are too many children in oversized and supersized classes, there are too many head teachers struggling to wonder how on earth they're going to cope, and there are even schools going down to 4.5-day weeks because they can't afford to be open for the full 5 days across the whole of this country. None of that is right, none of that is necessary. It will require a Labour government to fix it. But it's also about education opportunities, about making sure that before the school career begins, children do get at least 30 hours a week free preschool support facilities to interact, to socialise together. It's so important that children learn to grow up and play together from the very earliest years. We cannot go on being a country with a postcode lottery, where postcode A, you get to go to a nursery, you get to go to a good primary school, you get to a secondary school, you get to a good university, and you get a good job. Children growing up in postcode B don't get the preschool they should, go to an oversized class at primary school, don't get the support they should get in secondary school, don't get to college, and don't get to university. They lose, we lose. We lose the skills they could have developed, they lose because of the ambition they had for themselves is not requited. So it is about investment in everybody in our society, and that is what our offer is. Now in the election campaign, there were some, as we wrote the manifesto, there were some choices we had to make. Choices we had to make that were of enormous importance, and we took the view that charging students fees to go to college, taking away the educational maintenance allowance and increasing student fees to £9,000 a year, and the Tories and Lib Dems threatened to lift the cap altogether, was simply wrong and was going to lead to massive levels of debt for not just a generation that have come from university, but a generation yet to go to university. And of course the danger is there's a high level of dropout, or students simply don't feel they're capable of sustaining that level of debt in the future and don't go to university at all. So we took the view that it was quite right to increase taxation at the top end in order to pay the university fees so that everyone who wants to and is able to is capable of going to university or college. And that pledge will be there in the next manifesto whenever that election comes along, because we want an educated society. We want everyone to be able to achieve their greatest potential. And we will do that by a lot of means, partly by funding, but partly about attitudes towards education. One part of the manifesto I was very proud of, it's not a particularly expensive part, was the pupil arts premium, in which we would give ring-fenced money to every school to make sure every child can learn a musical instrument and pursue artistic endeavours in school, and work with local galleries, theatres and museums, because it's also about the creativity that's there in all. That is the kind of decent, inclusive society that we want to live in. So those things are so crucial, and those are going to be there in the next manifesto when it comes, as indeed is going to be a programme to address the housing crisis facing this country. Grenfell Tower should be a wake-up call to just about everybody. A towering inferno of predominantly poor people burnt to death in the richest borough in this country. And a shame beyond shame. And the need, of course, to immediately inspect all buildings all around the country to make sure they're safe. The need to properly fund our fire and rescue service to make sure it's there and available for them at all times. and I pay a huge tribute to the firefighters who risked all to go in. And as Matt Rack so eloquently put it at the Durham Miners' Gala, every one of those firefighters wearing breathing apparatus with a police riot shield over their head to protect them from falling debris as they entered the building, going into that inferno to try and save life. Every single one of those was a trade unionist. They are people that stand up for each other and stand together for each other. But it also means looking at the way in which local government and local authorities have been so denied and reduced of resources over the past few years that the building control departments are underfunded, health and safety inspections are not done as frequently as they used to be, fire inspections are not done as frequently as they used to be. When you underfund public services, when you deregulate society, somebody pays a price. And that somebody is nearly always the poorest and most vulnerable in our society, not those with the wealth and resources to get round it. And so it's a question of attitudes and philosophy that is so important in the way that we deal with this. And Labour government will be pledged to tackle the housing crisis in this country by providing the resources to build council housing, providing the regulations to give people security of tenure in the private sector and safe and decent conditions in which to live. Because these crises are made by us. They're made by political choices. The political choice, do you give tax giveaways to the biggest businesses, corporations and the wealthiest in our society, knowing full well what the consequences are? Or do you create a stronger, bolder, more confident society by investing in the skills and life chances and opportunities of all people? I go for the latter. We go for the latter. That is what Labour is about. So it's about what we do now. After the election was over, we want another election as soon as possible, and if Theresa May is back from a holiday yet, perhaps she's listening, I think it's a really good idea to take another walk and have an epiphany moment while you're walking and come along with a proposal to dissolve Parliament and have another election. We're ready for it at any time. And so we are doing this summer campaign, and we're going to marginal constituencies all over the country. There are 75 seats or thereabouts that we could gain in a general election, and we're looking at all of those all over Britain, and we're doing public meetings, events and rallies for party members and the public to come along, get involved and be part of our movement. So our campaigning is not just about voter identification. It's about talking with people, talking to people, campaigning together with people to defend our National Health Service, to defend our public services and to invest in the jobs and industry and infrastructure of the future. That's what our campaigns are about. So our party is a campaigning movement that's there all the time, out and about, bringing people together, creating that sense of community strength. The commentariat read it so wrong in the general election because they didn't understand that social media means that people can get information from anywhere they like and make up their own mind. They don't have to have a multi-millionaire newspaper proprietor living in a tax haven telling them how to think, what to say and how to vote. They can do it themselves. So it is about mobilising people. And our campaign has been in the southwest. We're going to the northwest next week, and I'm spending a good amount of time in Scotland the week after that. We're campaigning all over the country. I congratulate those Labour candidates that won in the general election. I thank all those that worked so hard to gain seats and to raise the Labour vote in all parts of the country, and in some cases in extremely difficult areas where they found support in the most surprising places. Because you know what? When you give a clear message to people of a clear alternative to what the Tories and the Lib Dems are offering, people do say, well, actually, you are offering something different. You are offering something practical. You will transform the lives of all of us if you can win that election. So that is what we are absolutely determined to do. There are big issues facing us all, huge issues that have got to be faced. The Brexit negotiations are not easy. The issue is not an easy one for the party. We have people who voted both Remain and Leave in the referendum and hold very strong opinions on that. I'm determined that we will maintain a tariff-free trade relationship with Europe that will protect those working conditions, environmental conditions and consumer protection conditions that we obtain through membership of the European Union. We will guarantee all EU nationals full citizenship rights and family reunion rights to remain in this country and support their work, and we'll have that close relationship with Europe in the future. And indeed, our Brexit team have been over to a number of European capitals, and I went to Brussels myself with part of our team, and to show goodwill I gave Michel Barnier an Arsenal shirt to start the negotiations going. He appreciated it, he really did. He told me he was probably an Arsenal supporter. Lots of people tell me they're probably Arsenal supporters, it's okay. But it is obviously a vital and serious issue, and we will pursue that all the way, because we have to ensure that jobs are protected, that trade access is protected, and trade with Europe carries on. Because the alternative is the Tory plan of a sweetheart deal with Donald Trump and the USA, which would tear up working conditions, tear up regulations, and lead us into a bargain basement economy in which we import the worst aspects of workplace regulation from the United States, i.e. hardly any, into this country. We need something different and something better, and a trade relationship with the rest of the world based on fairness and on social justice and on human rights. And I'm determined we will achieve that. And so, we have so many issues facing us. And if you think about it, talked about the National Health Service and the principles of the kind of society in which we live. But I also ask you to think about the world in which we live, the way in which we have to pursue an agenda of human rights all around the world with whoever we trade, whoever we have any contact, and also recognise we on one planet, we live on one planet that is vulnerable, that is under threat, that is under danger. So the proposal of Donald Trump to walk away from the Paris Climate Change Accord is not just wrong, it's dangerous for every American just as much as it's dangerous for everybody on every other continent of the whole of the world. And so a Labour government would be prepared to challenge Trump on the climate change agreement and have to pursue an environmental policy and agenda that does deal with issues of air pollution, does deal with issues of biodiversity and sustainability. And so, in I hope the very short time that we have available between now and whenever the next general election comes, I want everyone to be involved in policy development and policy making in our party. Take, for example, transport policy. Either we can go on with expensive overcrowded trains, with a totally inadequate bus service across the whole country, and the result being greater congestion on our roads and in our cities, worse air, and actually worse levels of movement. Or we can invest in good quality public transport. We can do what Marvin and other mayors are trying to do, improve metro transport systems and tram systems all across the country, and improve air quality at the same time. Investing in public good results in good for all of the public, but you can't do it without being prepared to bite the bullet of the levels of inequality that are faced across this country. And so we will be looking at urban policy development, which gives hope and opportunity to people living in the most deprived inner city communities, but so looking at the deprivation that's there in much of rural Britain, cut off with no bus services, poor quality broadband, unaffordable housing, and loss of jobs because nobody will invest in those places because there isn't the communications that are necessary. We're a party that's working for everyone across the whole country, not just certain parts of it. And that's what's so exciting about the vibrancy of our party. We're a party that founded the NHS. We're a party that came together on a mission of social justice. We're a party that's proud of many of our achievements: the Human Rights Act, the Equalities Act, the anti-discrimination legislation that's been passed. Those achievements, going back to the 19th century, when people bravely stood up for the right to join the trade union, the right to campaign, the right to free speech, the right to vote, the right for women to vote, the right to be able to live your life to the full, whatever your ability or disability. Those are the principles that guide and unite our party. As we go into the 21st century even further, we have to keep all those principles on board. We don't ditch any of those principles. We use those principles to guide our policy making for the future. And I'm proud of what we've achieved thus far in the party. And I'm very proud to lead this party in the biggest membership we've had, certainly during my lifetime. But yet, we haven't yet formed that Labour government. So I ask all of you, spend your time doing things together, campaigning together. Whatever your age, whatever your ability, whatever your background, strength comes from people doing things together, not by blaming each other for things that haven't been done. It's that strength that keeps our party together and keeps us together. It's that strength that does so much good in communities. And so, young and old, black and white, able, disabled, all together, surely is a much the future. I want us to be ready for that election whenever it comes. I want us to be ready to carry that message out of what we're going to do here, and the inspiration we take from those in other parts of the world who've suffered so grievously from war and human rights abuses and exploitation of their natural resources. So a Labour government in Britain dedicated to social justice here. A Labour government in Britain dedicated to peace and human rights around the world. Surely that's something worth working for, something worth campaigning for. It's our party coming together. We can achieve so much. Thank you for all you've done here in Philton and Bradley. Thank you for all you achieved in Bristol. Thank you very much.
Thank you everybody for coming today, and a big special thank you to Jeremy Corbyn. Put your hands together.